At the public session, the inaugural panel discussion on India at 100, Unlocking Potential, Transforming Lives. For the session, may I request Ms Swati Salgaocar, Chairperson CII Western Region, to please join us on stage, accompanied by Mr. Jamshyd Godrej, Past President CII, Mr. Sanjiv Puri, President CII, Mr. Rishi Bagla, Deputy Chairman, CII Western Region, and Mr. Advani, Chairman and Managing Director, Blue Star. And we also have Mr. Rajan Navani and Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General CII, joining us virtually on the Zoom call. Requesting Swati ma'am to take over, please.
Panel both present here and also joining remotely. We have with us Mr. Sanjiv Puri, President CII and also Chairman ITC. We have Mr. Jamshyd Godrej, past President CII and Chairman Godrej Enterprises Group. We have Mr. Rishi Bagla, Deputy Chairman Western Region and Chairman BG Lin Electronics. Advani, Chairman of Blue Star. As I mentioned, we have Rajan Navani from Jet Synthesis and, of course, CB, Director General, CII, joining us remotely. I know CB has a time constraint due to some government meetings, so we'll just dive straight into it. Maybe, CB, if you could just share with us your thoughts on India at 100. It's an initiative that CII has been part of for a long time, starting with India at 75 and, of course, now moving on to India 100. And, from your vantage point, if you could just share some thoughts with us.
Well, thank you, Swati, and sorry for not being present in person because of certain meetings, but also, both the president and the president-designate mentioned that you were there the full day yesterday, and why do you have to stay on? You come back. We are going there anyway, but you have to spend time with Swati. So that was one of the other reasons which the president didn't tell you, and for me to attend these government meetings that one has here. But besides that, Swati, I just wanted to go back to 2007-8 when India at 75 was formed, and just mention about the person who gave us the foresight of looking at why we should look at India at 75 at that point in time. So it was Professor C.K. Prahalad, and he told us that we need to see how do we look at India at 75. In 2006-7, when we were celebrating India at 60. That was the time when this idea was planted into CII, and this entire foundation was formed of India at 75. It was launched in 2008. Mr. K.V. Kamath was the then president. And then, of course, the continuity has been Rajan through the council within the CII. The foundation has had chairman changes, but Rajan continued within the CII as the CII anchor. And today, the chairman of the foundation is Ajay Piramal. We have a very strong board which sort of works on India at 100 now, which got the India at 75 movement has got it morphed into India at 100. And so this has been the background. And today, as you know, in the session which both you spoke, the CII president spoke about it. If we really look at what we are looking at India at 100, there are clearly four big pieces. This entire piece which is going to be very critical for CII when we are looking at the country. It's that we are going to focus on through this India at 100 foundation with CII fully involved in it, is the space of climate, green, sustainability, water, agri, all of that comes into one bucket, if I may say, and that's going to be a very critical area of our work, both for our companies as well as for our for the country, and that's going to be a center stage of India at 100. With that would come, of course, this entire piece on technology, innovation, R&D. That second area, which is going to be extremely important, not just for our member companies, but for India. India's digitization story has been so great, and that's something that we need to take forward so that it benefits the people of India. And the third piece, of course, is this piece of human capital. For a developed India for 2047, we believe that we have to have strong investments into the human capital. So the India at 100 board meetings and the initial discussions have focused on really on the villages of India, on how do we look at healthcare, how do we look at education, how do we look at livelihood, a lot of which you have talked about, Swati, as a chairperson, and did a lot in the Western region and across the country. It was done on livelihood skill development. So these three areas of work would be very critical for India at 100 as we move along from where we started as India at 75.
Thank you so much, CB. I know, unfortunately, you have to leave, but maybe, before, just a quick question for you. What do you see as CII sort of, if you were to pick sort of 2 or 3 key focus areas, that'll continue to define CII's engagement with the government as we move towards India at 100?
Of course, the policy advocacy side is going to be critical for a developed India. The policy advocacy side, again, this was mentioned in the business session, where the policy advocacy would not be only restricted to the central government, but with the state governments. That's going to be a key agenda. The CII, India's linkage with the rest of the world. Now, we had the presidency of the G20. India led the G20 just 2 years, a year and a half back. So India's connect with the globe, and CII has played a huge role in the past many decades, and this is going to be another very key role for us to be globally connected. So that's through the India at 100 as well as otherwise. That's going to be a key area, and a lot of touch points were there about our centers of excellence, which is being not only making Indian industry competitive, but all our members competitive. But it also talks a lot about India. When we talk about green, when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about climate, when we talk about pollution, when we talk about water, technology, all of it also touches lives within India, skills, say, for instance. So it's just not only restricted to India, Indian industry. So it is across the... So we would look at some of our centers actually going global. Some of these centers of excellence growing global in the next few years to come. And we would also look at new centers which would aid us going to and working very closely with the government, because when we talk about AI and technology, while we need technological prowess within the Indian industry, we would also need a lot more going into not only within the policy ecosystem in India, but India's leadership in the world to influence the policy ecosystem, both on all the areas that we have discussed, starting from green, climate, would be extremely important. And I see that's the key role that CII plays, just not in the policy framing mechanism within India and the Indian states, but also across the globe. Thank you, Swati.
Great. Thank you so much, CV. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you back in Bombay and the region again very soon. So thank you. Next, we'll move on to Rajan Navani. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with us in person today. He's joining us from Pune. He's, of course, been involved with India at 75 and now India at 100. So maybe, Rajan, you'd like to share a little bit about your involvement with the initiative.
Sure. Thank you, Swati. And again, sorry I couldn't be there in person, but this has been a long journey, as CB rightly mentioned, for CII, starting out from India at 60 to India at 75. I think that 50-year period really set the foundation for an accelerated movement towards an inclusively developed India, which also aligns with Prime Minister's Viksit Bharat agenda of 2047. So I think, as we look at the next 23 years now, as we look to get there, we always talk of India as being a 8,000-year-old country, but a 77-year young country. And I think it is that spirit of growth, the spirit of ensuring that there are greater livelihoods for all our stakeholders and all citizens of India, and creating a progress mechanism chart which will actually, drive this growth. Towards that, I think, we've really looked at, as CII and of course collaboratively, India at 100 in 5 different buckets. First, of course, towards a larger goal of being able to achieve holistic leadership, in a new world order, which is emerging. And I think towards that, I think there are multiple stakeholders who will have to play a role. And I think in that being the outcome, there are a few very strong drivers that we need to see happen. Maximizing the inclusive economic progress across manufacturing, services, agriculture. How do we revitalize our soft power, whether it is in arts and culture, sports, tourism? How do we innovate to stay ahead? Whether it is through digital platforms, climate sustainability, as we discussed, or new transformative technologies. And core will be the T, which is transforming the core of India, whether it's in education, healthcare, infrastructure, urbanization, and governance. So really aligned as a Amrit, as we talk of it, as a little connotation of the golden age of India towards the next 23 years. Of course, this is built as a larger document and an alignment with a national agenda. But within this, I think each of these pieces, multiple stakeholders need to play a role. And of course, we can discuss, but there's a large push for an agenda, at least within industry, to bring about new areas of creating this change. I think volunteering, pro bono, and these have been big initiatives that CII has led, which are not really in the, as visible today, but I think we want to see get more visible over the next few years. So I think the role of industry, the role of civil society, government, state, district to transform the core is where I think the larger focus we are seeing for the next 23 years, which will also use, CSR capital from corporates, align and prioritize that along with bringing about systemic change to create the necessary impact. I'll stop here, but can go into other parts later. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thanks for that, Rajan. And now moving to our distinguished panelists in the room. I think just to open with, India is growing rapidly, but I think our global innovation and competitive rankings have been quite mixed. I think something that, we'd all like to hear from you is, what would you see as India's biggest strength today? And what's the one area where we're, really falling back or behind globally? So maybe, Mr. Godrej, if we could start with you. I know you've talked a lot about competitiveness, in the past, so it'd be great to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, Swati. Well, I think, I want to just focus today on the state of our cities, because we all know that cities are hubs of innovation. And I think that one of the crucial things that we have to recognize is that an efficient city, does attract all different varieties of inputs for becoming more competitive. And it's not that the hinterlands don't matter, but I think that globally this is the case, that and the state of our cities is something I think that we have not focused on adequately, despite the fact that we recognize that urbanization is something that the world is going to see much more of. Especially older cities. How do you rejuvenate them? How do you make them hubs of innovation where every type of person who would be contributing in the city can really give up their own? And it has a lot to do with transportation. This is an area for sustainability. When we look at the state of public transportation in Indian cities, it is woefully inadequate. And one of the things that the Indian Green Building IGBC does is look at how we can create greater transport hubs which are green. One of the things that you do in a green building is you have to provide adequate space for charging, electrical charging. You've got to provide adequate space for cycles and, of course, for walking. And this area, the walkability of cities, the ability to be able to use public transport, like I'm presuming that every one of us in this room, has come here in a personal vehicle. Whereas I think if you look at some of the major global cities, you really don't need to own a private vehicle except to go outside the city. So we must focus on why and how urbanization can make a big difference. And it's got to do with urban planning. It's got to do with the linkages between buildings, transport, with the ability of cities to attract the right type of people. For instance, Bangalore has attracted a huge number of global competency centers. Very few other cities have had that success. But, Bangalore is also, in some ways, a victim of its success. And we've seen that the totally unplanned urbanization can result in huge amounts of flooding when there's excess rainfall, etc. So I want to just focus our attention on other aspects of competitiveness and look at why a city like New York or London is really efficient. It's efficient for energy use. If you look at energy per square meter, square kilometer, whatever, they are amongst the most energy efficient cities in the world compared to the best energy efficient city in the world. If you compare the average in India, it's way down. Second, on transport, especially on public transport. It's almost non-existent for most people who would otherwise have used a car. And I think it's got to do with the convenience, with the safety. It's got to do with, for instance, some years ago I was involved in a discussion on siting of metro stations. And the interesting thing that the people in the room, especially the urban planners, they were aghast that government bureaucrats and ministers only wanted to see the political connection for them and in terms of the siting of the station. And the urban planners were saying, well, the station needs to be here, here, and here, whereas those guys were saying, no, we want it here, here, and here. And they were completely different. So we don't recognize that, what makes a city efficient to make it a real hub of innovation. And that's, I think, a theme for us to think about more and more. I think unless businesses and CII and other organizations start looking at this as a mainstream activity for the way that we think about the future of India, I think we will have a big problem. For instance, just as an aside, we know that some of our cities, smaller cities, like for instance Varanasi, there are many, many tourist sites in Varanasi where if you want to go to them at a time when a lot of people want to go visit those temples, etc., it's almost impossible. So, and it can then result in stampedes and deaths, etc. So this is just a minute of that idea that how do we really look at our cities from the point of view of sustainability, efficiency, and bring in the type of the experience of being in a city, should be good enough for us to see that, by India at 100, in 47, how will it actually result in efficiency in India being enhanced due to better cities? Thank you.
you.
And since you're an architect, maybe you can lead that.
I think you're continuing the tradition of once you're in CI, you never leave. But thank you for that, look beyond sort of the conventional definition of what competitiveness means, not just for industry, but India really as a country. And we'll come back to some of those themes a little later. But maybe if we can hear from Mr. Puri now.
Okay. So, see, India has a lot of strengths, no doubt. I think one very important strength is certainly the demography and the scientific temper, the STEM talent. These are very strong elements. And so that's a strength, but I would say it's an underexploited strength, and I'll come to that later. I think the second strength we have, of course, is we are a large market, large number of people. So it's a large consumer market. That's a very good strength. The third, of course, strength we have is that we have a vibrant democracy. We have a government that is focused on growth and policy enablement. There's lots that's been happening over the last several years. India is also has access to amongst the largest arable land in the world. Quite a lot of strengths we have with us. The biggest one, of course, I believe is the demography and the scientific temper. However, the challenge I think where we haven't done well is really to convert that demographic dividend and the scientific temper into, on one hand, intellectual property. We produce huge number of engineers, 500,000 every year. We have some institutions that are par with the best in the world, or the talent there is at par with the rest in the world. Yet, on the innovation index, on intellectual property, I think, Swati, you mentioned that in the beginning, we are way down. We've not been able to translate that. And that's to do, I think, with the extent of collaboration between industry and academia. There is research happening in academia, but that may or may not be addressing some of the pressing issues that the industry sees, or maybe the society is looking at it. We are seeing that change, but I think the change is not big enough. The second is I think also as industry, we haven't yet started taking these big bets. We haven't yet started developing the mindset for innovation and R&D. And when we talk about innovation and R&D, some of them have a lot of gestation. Some of it does not have. Some of it is, India is very good also at frugal innovation. You know, there are many interesting cases I have come across in some of the IITs, and that too in collaboration with MSME industries. So very simple solution developed at a very small cost, at a short period of time. I think there are both gestating and there are short term, but I think in our own thinking, intellectual property is not right at the top. So I think that's one important facet that needs to change, and that's very critical for India to be competitive and successful in future. The second is that I believe the delivery of education needs to be strengthened, and there has to be a quantum shift. We have a lot of educational institutions, but huge amount of variability. Right down from primary level to the professional colleges, huge amount of variability. How do we get the delivery to be of a different order there? I think that's a challenge to look at. I think there have been some thought leaders who have suggested the fourth generation of reforms also there. We also need to really focus on getting the quality of education right down from primary to professional level, completely of a distant order. The third is the area of skilling. I think in skilling, I would say we again have some institutes that are doing a reasonable job, but there aren't enough institutes that are doing good amount of job in skilling. And the second is there is a huge amount of misalignment between what the industry needs and what is being produced. And the demand supply is not merely to be managed at a national level, it has to be managed at a local level. Last night we were discussing on, an opportunity in a very, very labor-intensive sector, not a very, high-tech sector, a labor-intensive sector as apparel. And we were looking at the possibility of opportunities for India. And one very important player there mentioned to me that, yes, opportunity is coming, but we are not able to scale up because we are only able to skill so many people in a year. So the skilling system, I think the skilling system has to be completely overhauled. To my mind, I think this piece, if we are able to solve, of course, it also requires more resources. Our spends in healthcare and education as a percent of GDP are still very small. They need to go up. I think this puzzle, if we are able to solve, we will really be able to actualize the potential of many of these sectors and many of the opportunities that are unfolding. The second point I want to talk about is really, I said we have the largest arable land. So that's an asset. But productivity is amongst the lowest. Natural resources are getting depleted. This sector is getting attacked by extreme weather events. What is the biggest cause of inflation is food inflation today. We used to have earlier inflation on account of vegetables, seasonal and unseasonal. Parts of the year, onion prices and tomato prices go up. But today we have inflation because of cereals, because of grains, because of wheat. Because the production has got affected by early heat last year. And we have a risk of that happening this year. Hopefully, it should not happen, but there is a risk again. So, we need to, on a war footing, really get into this whole strategy of building resilience in agriculture. And while I say so, let me also say it is possible to do it. There are enough and more examples, enough and more pilots that demonstrate it is possible to get resilience into agri-value chains. So we need to deal that. We need to look at, reimagine the way we deal with horticulture in India, because that has been a problem perennially. We need to look at fundamental reforms in agriculture. Not getting or creating barriers for the users and the producers to collaborate. Not having systems to plan what to produce. I think these are some serious challenges. The good part is there are policy interventions like digitization that the government is pursuing. There are these farmer collectives that are being made because we have landholdings that are fragmented. So these are pieces that need to fall in place. And this sector itself, in my view, can have a transformative effect on the economy because the numbers are huge. When incomes go up, consumption goes up, and it will give a lot of opportunities across the sector. So let me stop just with these two areas of focus.
Thank you, and thank you especially for your point on food security and how it's linked to climate change. We'll come back to some of those ideas. Could I now request Mr. Bagla for his comments? What are we, as a country, what are our strengths and where are we falling behind globally?
Thank you, Swati. I think it's very important to dream big, and India's dreaming big of becoming the third largest economy in the world by 2047, Viksit Bharat. $30 trillion, that means almost about 8 times of where we are today. I will speak about ease of doing business on my part. Now, it has to be a seamless business, and we need to talk how business can be seamless and how we can achieve what we need to achieve by making a very robust ease of doing business in our system. At the national level, there is a lot of activity that is happening at ease of doing business. But honestly, this has to translate down to the states and to the district level. Training is one of the very, very critical factors, because ease of doing business at the district level has to be the focus point, because we are actually, the business happens at the district level. So I personally feel that ease of doing business need to go down, right down to the district level. Once this happens, I feel that the feel good factor of doing business, of doing seamless business will be great, and we will be able to achieve with this kind of ease of doing business, we'll be able to get much more FDIs, which are going to be very, very critical to make us achieve our target of 30 trillion by the time we reach 2047 or Viksit Bharat. We need to become part of the global supply chain. If only we become a part of global supply chain, we definitely have a lot of demand in India, but we need to be part of the global supply chain to achieve our total target. We still need to improve on our digitalization, because that will help us making business seamless. We have done a lot of work, but we have still a long way to go, where we need to achieve a lot more on digitalization for businesses. And of course, as we say, land, labor, power. I'm not talking about the power cost, which is generally discussed. I'm talking about the quality of power. The quality of power is the significantly very important thing that we must keep in mind. That we want to become a global leader, we need to have a great quality of power, and so we need to have a strong transmission and distribution processes on power. We need to have last mile connectivity to bring the rural, semi-rural areas into the main line, and that becomes extremely important and critical for our country to become a Viksit Bharat and to make it an inclusive country where the rural areas are playing an important role as the urban areas to make our country great. As we say, as our Honorable Prime Minister said, let's make India great again. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I know you've been sort of a champion for ease of doing business across the region and for many years now. So thanks for those comments. Veer, maybe we could hear from you now. Your thoughts on what's next for India. What strengths should we be building upon, and what are really our weaknesses that we should be addressing?
Sure. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. So the title of this talk was about prosperous India at 100. So I was thinking about that, and I think if we are to really deliver prosperity to hundreds of millions of people by 2047, I think the answer or the key to that is employment. I think we all just need to focus on employment and employability of our youth. If we don't do that, then we may be a Viksit Bharat in some way, but I don't think we would have achieved the real objective of that target. So I pay less attention to 30 trillion and 25 trillion and 20 trillion. I think we should be talking about lifting the lives of these people. So if I was to look at that, employment, both quality and quantity, I see our youth as our strength. That's our single biggest strength, and probably perhaps less by design, but it is sort of falling in place. I think our second biggest strength right now is our geopolitical position. We seem to be well aligned globally. So if I try and marry those two together, I think that there's a huge potential for our manufacturing industry to provide that additional employment for our youth. What do I mean by that? It is, of course, we have Make in India, we have a lot of programs in place, but really at the heart of all of this is how do we serve our domestic market more effectively and efficiently? And then if I look at it, while of course India is a large market and there are multinationals looking to come here, I think as an Indian manufacturing industry, we need to look at global markets in the same breath as our domestic market. I think one mistake a lot of us make is that we get mesmerized with the Indian market and forget about the much larger market overseas. So if we're trying to solve an employment problem, then we need to look at the global market in manufacturing. And if we do that, then we have to be globally competitive. And so I therefore come to competitiveness. So you're asking our weakness. I think our weakness is our cost competitiveness. So if we're to solve employment, we need to solve cost competitiveness in manufacturing is my hypothesis. There are a number of ways to do that. Of course, many of my speakers already spoken about some of those. But I think at a policy level, we have industrial policy that is announced at a state level and national level, but we don't ever integrate trade and investment with that. So I think an integrated policy at a national level and then down to the states, I think will make a tremendous difference for that. I think if I loop back to the employment and employability, I think strengthening our human capital is essential. So I'm talking about everything from primary education, so upgrading that, to really making vocational training a sought-after thing, not something looked down upon. I think that combination of getting the foundation right and then giving people skills that they can actually go out and find a job will be essential, both for manufacturing as well as for solving the employment problem. Logistics is a subject we all talk about. Yesterday at the Manufacturing Summit, I think that was all that was talked about. Cutting logistics cost, I know that is a priority, but I look at it differently. I think we have to upgrade all our logistics infrastructure in the country. We don't have deep sea ports, for example. We're doing transshipments out of other countries. We're inefficient. Road, rail, ports, everything. I think I like the government's focus on it. I know they talk a lot more than they do, but Gati Shakti, even if we're able to achieve half of what is envisaged, I think it'll be a tremendous benefit for manufacturing and for competitiveness. And then lastly, of course, is investment in R&D. I think Sanjiv has spoken about it 2 times today, so I won't add to that. Just experience from our own company, we've increased our R&D spend 5 times in 5 years, and we're able to see tremendous benefit, for us. So I'm sure it is applicable for all of us.
Thanks for that, Veer. I think something that came up in a few of the speakers' comments was sort of sustainability and climate change. And, we're in an environment where in the West, there have been sort of mixed ideas on what climate change is, whether it exists, what the focus should be. But I think it would be great to hear from our panelists today, how should India look at sustainability? How should India look at clean tech? How should India look at, the new definition of ESG going forward? What does that really look for us as a country as we move towards India at 100? So I think maybe, Mr. Godrej, we'll start with you again, given your expertise in the subject.
Thank you, Swati. Well, it's a complex subject, sustainability. I think it really affects in one way or the other, everything that we do. I think starting from energy, I think even though India has a huge amount of coal, and at least for the next few decades, I think that will be the main driver for energy. I think the demand for energy is actually outstripping the capacity that we have. And even though there's been a concentration of policy reform on renewables, we don't see adequate renewals being put on the ground for a variety of reasons. But it's just not keeping up. And because of excessive heat that the planet is sort of experiencing, I think in every country and in the world, every month, we just keep on having a record of higher temperatures. So the result is that, especially in urban areas, we have this heat island effect. And the heat island effect actually makes the temperature in a city anywhere from 2 to 6 degrees higher, depending on which part you are. So the modern solution for that is air conditioning. I always complain about hotels that they only have one switch. It's either on or it's off. So you have to fix that wheel. And so you're either freezing, or maybe today, because the room is full, we're not freezing. But I think that air conditioning is one thing that, in a sense, the basic technology has not changed for many decades. And because of the heating, the demand for air conditioning is growing, and demand for air conditioning means you're going to need more energy, and we're not able to keep up with renewables. So what is the solution? So energy efficiency is the solution. This is an area that CII has worked on for a very long time. If you see the origins of the Green Business Center in Hyderabad, it started out because of our focus on energy efficiency. And that led to green buildings, and it led to, now a green cooling council, etc. So I think if we don't, you've got to look at both ends, right? I mean, the supply side and the demand side. So on the demand side, you can certainly do a lot to improve efficiency. I think every home, every company, if you really look into, what is your consumption of energy, there's an enormous amount that can be done to save. I think the best estimates based on, IEA, etc., recommendations is we can easily save 30% on energy with simple things. They are not very complicated and not very expensive. So that's the demand side. On the technology side, as has been already mentioned, I think air conditioning is a huge guzzler of energy. We need a lot more research globally. I mean, it's not just India that's the problem, it's a global problem. We haven't seen that step change in air conditioning. The laws of thermodynamics are very clear that, you're going to get something in and something out on that cycle. So we have a lot to do in that respect. I think many of you may be aware of the fact that, CII has pioneered a green rating for companies. It's pioneering now a supply chain connection on green rating. It's working on green product rating. So there's a lot that we can do on the demand side. But I think that unfortunately on the supply side, we are going to be in a situation for some years or some decades where our dependence on coal will be very high. And in a sense, I mean, whenever the power plant is in a remote location, I think at least you don't get the pollution in the city. But many of our big cities have this problem of large coal-based or fossil fuel-based plants close to the city. And that certainly increases the air pollution. And I think the other part on sustainability that we don't recognize adequately is that you may have seen the global reports that 15 of the most polluted cities, 15 out of 20 of the most polluted cities in the world are in India. And they are mostly in the north, Delhi and the whole belt there. And this is a direct health-related issue. I mean, there are any number of scientific reports which link air pollution to longevity. So even for Delhi, it's been said that you're cutting out at least 8 years of your life if you live in a city like Delhi because of the high level of pollution. And we're not thinking about these things. I mean, we talk of India at 47, but we have to think about these systemic issues on sustainability. So if we look at the big picture, then only will we understand that, yes, there are micro-solutions, and there are lots of micro-solutions. As Sanjiv Puri also mentioned earlier, CII has many centers of excellence, which focus on these issues of sustainability. And, but, it's very interesting that some decades ago, WWF had at its annual meeting, we were debating that what is it that I personally can do every day, to save the planet, okay? And it was very interesting discussion. And the final thing that boiled down to was that, okay, the best we can do is that we can put the water tap off when we brush our teeth. So you take the little water, you brush your teeth, then open it again. That was the final conclusion. Now, it's a bit of a joke also, but the point is that, what is it that we personally can do? Because if we don't think about that, and we say, okay, my company will do this, Swati will do this, somebody else will do this, that's fine. But we have to focus on what we can actually influence and do on a day-to-day basis.
Thanks for that. And I think after your comment on air conditioning, I have to go to Veer next.
I say that whenever I get onto a panel, I'm hoping that there's a coal producer there's anyone else other than me, because, I'm a major polluter and contributor to this problem, as Mr. Godrej has pointed out. So our company is an air conditioning and refrigeration company. Mr. Godrej is right that the technology has not been needs to be almost reinvented. It's over 100 years old. Of course, on the positive side, there are some positives, and I'll throw some ideas as well. On the positive side, I want to tell you that the Indian government has been extremely progressive in this area. I think they have seen the expected explosion of demand for cooling and in some places heating in the country, and have taken a number of proactive steps to figure out how we can regulate it more effectively. We have an India Cooling Action Plan that has been co-created by the industry and along with the government, which talks about leveraging all types of cooling technology, not just air conditioning. And industry is quite collaboratively working with the Bureau of Energy Efficiency on a number of these. I also want to tell you that Indian energy efficiency requirements for air conditioning cooling are one of the highest in the world. So we can take an India product and actually export it to almost any country in the world and meet their efficiency requirement, other than perhaps Japan and North Europe. I think these are two only areas which may be ahead of us. So the government is working hard. Industry is working along with them. There's a very interesting new policy that is coming out, which is district cooling policy for India. I want to just link back to the earlier discussion. One of the solutions for India at 100 is to create new cities from scratch. I think rather than overpopulating our existing cities and then figuring out how to retrofit them, it's extremely difficult. I think there's a case for us to create new cities, and if we do that, we can actually design them from scratch in a much more efficient manner. So cooling, for example, if you built a new city, you'd never do it the way you're doing it right now. You do it with a central district cooling plant, which would be significantly more efficient. So that's one policy that the government has introduced. We're excited about that. I just want to raise one word of caution. Everyone should keep in mind that while we're all looking at people and comfort, there's a much larger animal that is growing, that is demanding cooling, and that is data. Data centers are consuming a growing amount of cooling in the country, and as artificial intelligence goes all over, you're going to see data centers requiring much more coolings. Just to put in context, an AI server generates 7 times more heat than a traditional server. So we have to take that into account as well. And I think data centers are coming up in our cities. As you know, it is in Navi Mumbai, it is in Chennai, it is in Bangalore, it is in Hyderabad. So we have to be conscious about that. I think we have to create these new cities and move some of these data centers there as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Veer. Mr. Puri, maybe if you'd like to share your thoughts.
Yeah. This is, sustainability is no doubt a big issue. It's the elephant in the room. And it's capable of derailing whatever progress we make or the world at large makes, and what we are dealing with. See, look, it's about, one is preparing for the future, and the two is about dealing with the here and now. because extreme weather events are multiplying, and the reports already are saying that we will be crossing 2 degrees and so on and so forth. Some reports are saying 2.5 based on the commitments that have been made so far, not on what is on the ground. So, which means extreme weather events will multiply. So we have to deal with the here or now, which is the adaptation piece, and the second is preparing for the future. Now, if you look at this whole issue about energy transition, and I must start by telling Jamshyd that actually the switches in the hotels actually can be set to the temperature you want. It's not on off. They're all electronic, all of them. Yeah, but leaving that aside, I think what we need there is, we need first of all Indian solutions. I think Jamshyd made a valid point on coal, right? So that is a reality. It is a reality. Because if you say that we are going to completely do away with coal, the capital that is required, number one. Number two, the social cost of transition, society will not be able to bear. Ultimately the transition is also about a just transition. So therefore we need to find solutions. Solutions about carbon capture, storages, more efficient production through coal. We need to develop those technologies. And there are some pieces that are happening in the IITs, but I think a lot more that needs to be done there. Whilst parallelly we work on the newer technologies, the solar, the wind, harness those potential, and also about the biofuels piece, the hydrogen piece, all that of course needs to be developed, and they should take care of the growth. But then, coal cannot be substituted overnight. It's going to take a long time. But we need to make that, how do we make that more efficient? Carbon capture, so on and so forth. Can we develop some out-of-the-box solutions there? I think that's key. And that's it's an area that doesn't have adequate focus across the world, but I think it's important for India. Because one estimate suggests that if we are to really go to net zero, it requires some 90% of the world's coal to be phased out, which is not feasible in decades. Second is that, a lot of these technologies that are evolving around the world also are expensive. There are IPs around it. So we do need to create a lot more public-private partnerships to make technology accessible. Because when it's accessible, capital can fund it. Even private capital can fund it. When it's expensive and the economic returns are not there, then the uptake is going to get limited. Because ESG is also about economic efficiency. It is not just about environmental efficiency. In fact, economic efficiencies gives you the platform to actually deal with the environmental issues. So these are the 2 points I will make on energy. The second point I want to talk about is adaptation. And when we talk about adaptation, we are talking about heat, droughts, flood, pollution, all of these put together, and all of this have a very severe impact. And it has the worst impact on the vulnerable sections of society. So it actually disrupts this whole journey towards inclusive growth. Because what climate change is doing, it is making the most vulnerable sections of the society that suffer the most. Typically, when floods happen, whose homes get destroyed? When inflation happens, who is the person who is not able to afford a proper meal? It is the vulnerable sections of society. So this is absolutely key. So what I think needs to be done there, and CII has done some study on it, and we have a report published on it, and I would recommend that all the members take a look at it. It deals with 2 things. It deals with this whole issue about how do I respond to an extreme weather event, and how do I prepare myself in future for extreme weather events. So how do you deal with an extreme weather event? I'll give you a parallel example. Do we not have fire safety procedures in every building and factories? So we'll need a similar level of preparedness to deal with extreme weather events. So this is what the guide gives you. The second is, how do I prepare myself for future? So there, the model is that really, there's a lot of data available in the world today. So can we do a decadal mapping of what your high risks are going to be? Is it going to be heat? Is it going to be flood? Is it going to be droughts? Is it going to be lack of water? What is your problem? Can you model that and start working on the solutions to that? And there are solutions to all of these. And the solutions, let me tell you, are not very difficult. See, just to give you an example, there is an agency that has prepared a plan for dealing with water in Bangalore, to deal with the issue of water security, not the supplies to the houses. All that this costs is 150 crores for the entire city of Bangalore. Okay. So it's not that the solutions are expensive. You know, we are in Mumbai, near Mumbai in Pune, there is this Godrej River region. Now this, some years back, had a negative water balance. So several years back, through public-private partnership, this water balance has been turned into positive. Very small cost. It's maybe 10 crores or 15 crores or something like that, by working on the demand and supply side with all the stakeholders. So there are solutions available there. You know, for heat, for example, one architect I saw came across with an interesting solution. He created a terracotta structure. So when, you know, people come out of their offices, you are exposed to extreme heat and that can impact your health. So he created a nice terracotta structure where you simply spray water. And for several hours, it cools down that area. So simple solutions are also available. I think we have to really apply ourselves to it, identify this as a problem, and look at the solutions that are available. The second point connecting to this is, I like to emphasize, is the role that biodiversity plays. Issues of tree plantation. In Delhi, for example, you know, one of the things that Pan IIT Association is working on is to plant 1 million trees of, I hope I am able to pronounce the name of the tree correctly, but if I am not, please pardon me. It's called Milayaka tree or Milwaukee tree, something like that. That is supposed to be very effective in absorbing pollutants from the air. So there are targeted, lots of targeted solutions available. So in public-private partnership, I think we need to take these forward at scale. The very important piece on this is capital. This whole energy transition and adaptation actually needs trillions of dollars of funding. Globally, whatever funding was supposed to come hasn't happened. And a lot of data has shown that almost 40% of the funds in that are actually private funds. So how do you unlock private funds? Wherever there is ROI, private funds will come. So how do you make ROI? You can make ROI better by making technology accessible. So that's where public-private partnerships are important, where technology is created for public good. And the second is that the regulations must reduce the friction in the system. You know, I'll give you a case in point. This open access regulations that the government has brought in, they're fantastic piece of regulations. But much of it has got blocked at the last mile. So if you have regulations that avoid the friction, then the ROI in the projects improve and automatically private capital will go behind it. So these are the two things I think we need to pursue on a big scale. And to the very important point that Jamshyd raised about what is, you see, each one, you know, it's about society, it's about our companies, it's about policymakers, it's about each one of us individually, what are we doing for sustainability. I think a very good template is the government's template on life. There's a lot of good things there. So if we read that, we'll get a lot of ideas into what each one of us can individually contribute to building a greener world. Let me stop there.
Thank you so much, Mr. Puri. And I see the panelists for the next session are already in the room. So maybe, Mr. Bagla, if you could just quickly share your thoughts on, you know, what sustainability looks like for India at 100, and then we'll close.
Thank you, Swati. I'll give you a quick example of what we did with water in our city. CII about 12 years back decided to clean up a river. The river which was a garbage river and which was not, it was just become a nala, a river that had become a nala. Believe me, CII took the initiative, took some CSR funds, and we started doing this. Mr. Mukundan is here, he knows a bit about it. And the river was called Kham River. And everybody knows that Aurangabad is a city which is supposed to be water short or water starved or city which does not have enough adequate water. Due to this process, that stream, or that what I would say a small stream, has now become a full-fledged river. And today we have water adequacy in the city, and we are entirely reusing 100% of the water that we use in the city. So there, the requirement of water in the city has come down so drastically. It's a case example to be studied and followed in each city. And now this has been adopted by Namami Gange by the Government of India. Just a short synopsis on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, I'd like to thank all of our panelists. It's been a great conversation. How are we looking at India at 100 from a policy level, from a social level, from an industry level as well. And I think, there's a lot of ideas here on how India at 100 can be inclusive, competitive, and sustainable as well. So with that, I'd like to thank all of you once again, and we'll move on to the next panel discussion.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause to our very esteemed panel. Thank you, sirs, for the call of action on climate resilience with relatable examples for all of us. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you.